Shalom to the elect. Gotta give all praises to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rekah, Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders, a great millstone who rule well, who teach well, and a sincere salutation to all the occupants pushing the truth throughout the four winds of the earth, waking up the hopeful elect. And shalom to the Agwaf who are listening and learning. Coming at you with another lesson, the Lord's will to be edifying. This is titled, America is Finished According to Edomites. America is finished according to this Edomite on this video that I'm about to play. Okay, these Edomites is bringing this truth out, man, every day, non-stop. So, Lord's willing, this edifying. I'm gonna go straight into the lesson. This is Psalm 64:8. They shall make their tongue to fall upon themselves, but they just bringing the truth out, man. Okay, must need to know to the public, man.
This is True News. I'm Rick Wiles. The Israeli Defense Force and the U.S. Department of Defense have sent secret military delegations to Ukraine to test the Russian-built S-300 missile defense system. According to the Times of Israel and Hadashot TV, Ukrainian military trainers instructed members of the American and Israeli armed forces on the capabilities of the Russian-built anti-missile defense system. A Russian news report said that American-made F-15 jets are training in Ukraine against the S-300 systems as part of an international exercise that includes Israeli pilots. Russia recently supplied Syria with the powerful air defense system after a Russian military aircraft was accidentally shot down by Syrian anti-aircraft missiles during an Israeli airstrike on Syria. The arrival of the Russian S-300 system is a game changer in the Middle East. Russia now has the military capability to shut down all air traffic over Israel, Syria, and other Middle Eastern nations. If a Russian politician, however, knows something that the rest of the world doesn't yet know, it won't be air traffic only in the Middle Eastern sky that will be shut down someday. Vladimir Zhirinovsky, a member of the Russian parliament since the 1990s, disclosed on a Russian television news talk show that Russia also has S-600 and S-700 air defense systems. The 72-year-old legislator disclosed the information on national television as he commented on the delivery of S-300 systems to Syria. He said, quote, S-300 has interested them. Now, he was talking about the United States. He went on to say they had previously paid no attention whatsoever to some S-300s, but now they're scared because Israel, the United States' close ally, is scared. S-300s are nearby. Every jet, not just Israeli, every military jet may be destroyed. Mr. Zhirinovsky went on to say, quote, the Americans are scared in general. They are scared that the world's best air defense system is Russia's S-300. And we also have S-400, S-500, S-600, and S-700. We can shut down the whole planet and no plane will be able to take off, end of quote. When the Russian talk show host laughed and jokingly advised Mr. Zhirinovsky to be careful not to disclose the S-1500 system, the legislator shot back by saying that the S-700 will, quote, block everyone at the launch points for good, and this will be the last blow of the Russian counter-air defense system, end of quote. Edward Zoll and Doc Burkhardt are here and eager to talk about the change in the balance of power in the Middle East.
That's incredible.
Yeah, you caught us off guard, Rick. We weren't expecting that.
You know, I've heard Avigdor Lieberman, the Israeli defense minister, he's mentioned the S-600 system before, but everyone assumed it was a misspeak. He mentioned about 4 months ago when he was describing the potential for Russia to move in reinforcements in Syria. But basically, this is a legislature in Russia saying there's 600 and 700,
Yes.
S-700 that could shut down the planet's air capabilities.
To my knowledge, I have only read a few times. I'm thinking maybe 2 or 3 times over the past 2 years, any Russian news article that mentions S-400 and S-500.
Yes.
Well, let's say the S-500. They do talk about the S-400.
Quite a bit, actually, but
Yes, the S-400 they do talk about, but the S-500 is still rarely mentioned in the Russian news media. If Mr. Zaranovsky is correct, they have an S-600 and an S-700, and he said, we'll shut down the whole planet.
right, the capability of that. Now, do you think he's just blowing smoke, or is he, I don't think he would say anything that wasn't authorized by the highest levels of Russia.
Mr. Zaranovsky has in the past made other claims about military power of the Russians, secret weapons. He has referred to secret weapons where he said, I remember a few years ago, he said, we can put an entire continent to sleep. And I'm trying to remember what event happened. Oh, yes, I do recall. It was after Fukushima. Okay, so we'll go back. Here's what happened. Well, let's see, what year was Fukushima? Was it 2011?
Yes, I believe so.
2011?
I believe
think
2011,
so.
yes.
All right, so what happened was the mayor of Tokyo, which is, or should it's not the mayor, the governor of Tokyo. The governor of Tokyo made a statement in Japanese news organizations that Japan would have nuclear and he talked about nuclear weapons, and I'm trying to think of the other weapon that he said that Japan would have by the end of the year. Okay. Now, days later, like within a week, you had Fukushima. You had the earthquake, the tidal wave,
Right.
all right, and the nuclear power plants were taken out. So it was revealed that the one power plant was being used to produce the material for Japanese nuclear bombs. Okay. And right after that, Mr. Zaranovsky said, speaking of the Japanese, he said, if they want another dose,
Yes,
we'll give it to them.
I remember that.
Do you remember that, Doc?
Yes,
He said, if they want another dose, he said, we'll give it to them. He said, we have weapons that can put continents to sleep.
Implying that Russia was behind what happened.
Yes.
So,
That's incredible. I've never heard this before.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it would make sense because Japan, one of the things, I think they're talking about missile capabilities. I think in addition to nuclear, you mentioned the weapon, because Japan was looking, they were actually shopping at the time, either to go with the United States or another country that could provide missile defense systems, both for North Korea, but also for China, because Japan sees, they want to be sovereign, basically, against any
But
threats.
Japan, the governor of Tokyo had made the statement, we will have nuclear weapons by the end of the year of 2011. And a week later, you had Fukushima.
right.
And you've never heard another word about Japanese nuclear forces. But Mr. Zaranovsky made that statement. So he makes these wild statements at times, and you have to wonder, okay, does he just have a flair for getting attention? He's a very flamboyant politician. I mean, he's kind of like a poor man Donald Trump. All right,
Like Lindsey Graham in America.
Oh, no. It's far
different.
Yeah, he's he's a very popular politician. very nationalistic. Okay, so he's all about Russia. He's all about Russian strength, and he makes these statements from time to time. But listen to what he said. He said the S-700 would be able to shut down the points,
From the launch pad.
the launch pad worldwide.
Yes.
An international no-fly zone. I mean, this is way past the capabilities or even the power exerted from having nuclear dominance. You're talking about literally controlling the airspace of the entire globe.
Yes, that's what he just said.
So is it real or not?
Look, what about Vladimir Putin's weapon that can take out? Remember,
A hypersonic, supersonic vehicle
Yes.
that can basically avoid any air defense systems in existence today, and it can even be launched from anywhere in the world.
Is it real? Is it real, or is it an imaginary threat from Russia? What about the submarine that launches a torpedo that can produce a tsunami that's, 1,500 feet high?
Yes.
Real? Is it a real threat, or is it an imaginary threat? We don't know. We don't know. The Russians are either bluffing, saying, we have weapons you don't know about,
Right.
and you're making us mad, or they're just blowing smoke, hoping that we back down.
Well, bringing the story back to the Middle East, I mean, we do know the Russians have S-300s and S-400s. They're supplying S-300s now to Syria and to Iran, and now I guess Syria and Iraq are now talking again.
Yes.
And the S-300s are involved in that discussion too.
And we do know that they have S-500s,
Right.
which are around Moscow.
Yes.
But there's very little discussion about the S-500s, and they're certainly not selling them to anybody. They're selling the S-300s, and I don't know if they've sold the S-400s yet.
There was some discussion of potentially selling S-400s to either Turkey and Iran, but they haven't fulfilled the requirements for that. So,
Okay, so, all right, let's just set aside what Mr. Zaranowski has said, that they will have the capability, or they may have already the capability to shut down global air traffic.
Right.
Which would also imply the ability to shut down the launch of ICBMs
strike it
worldwide.
eliminates first strike capability. It just occurred to me. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It would stop the launch of nuclear weapons by any country, not just the United States. You're talking about a literal amnesty on nuclear threats and weaponry.
Well, it also protects them, gives them the option on first strike capability, puts the cards back in there. If they're able to shut down first strike everywhere else, then they have the power to do a first strike.
Yes.
Because up to this point, really, it's the U.S. that has the true first strike capability anywhere.
And what we don't know is where is if the S-700 truly exists, where does it have to be deployed to have a global capability?
In a satellite, in the Arctic, it could be anywhere.
I don't know, but that's what you're hearing on Russian television, and that's what you're hearing here in America because of True News.
Yes.
You're not going to hear it any other place. You hear these things on True News. So let's just go back now. We'll just set aside Mr. Zaranowski's comment about S-700. Let's just go with S-300 in Syria, because what Mr. Zaranowski was saying before he got to the S-700 story was the Israelis are scared. And they're scared because now Russia can shut down all air traffic in the Middle East.
Yes. And so that's why they've made that trip to the Ukraine to see the S-300s in action along with the U.S. forces and be able to prepare for what's going to be happening here soon in the Middle East.
So does Ukraine have S-300s because the former Ukrainian government was pro-Russian and they had access to the S-300s?
I believe they have both S-200 and S-300 variants. Not the most up-to-date S-300, but yes, I believe that's when you mentioned they were training on it, I believe they have some leftovers. Mm-hmm. But the other part of the story is the Israeli pilots going to Ukraine. I mean, we're talking about Israeli pilots flying in a drill against Russia.
Yes.
You know, the story that really caught our eye today, Rick, was that
Think
Syria
about
and
what you
Iraq-
just said.
Yeah,
Israeli pilots are training in Ukraine
Eastern
for
Europe.
military operation against Russia.
It completely goes on its head. I mean, this is obviously Israel's play in this is that they're counter-striking. Israel doesn't believe that they can deal with what's happening right now on their borders, so they're helping with a counter-strike in some form, the training, so the United States will help them back home. But
Israel must get the United States to attack Russia. That's the bottom line.
that's the bottom line.
The Russians are now the dominant player in the Middle East. Israelis know they cannot take on Russia. They'll be crushed, absolutely crushed, if Israel got into a direct confrontation with Russia. It would be the end of the Zionist government in Israel. It's the end of it. They have to get the United States to fight Russia.
And you think about this, just like how the Ukrainians are training the Israelis to use the S-300s, the Syrians, now that they're getting the equipment, now that they themselves are being trained, will have the ability to train their regional allies. I'm talking about Iraq, Iran, maybe even Libya, the countries, Lebanon. All these countries now may, through Syria, get access not just to Syria's air defense, but may get access to build their own version of the S-300. This literally shuts down any foreign policy action by Israel. I'm talking about the airstrikes. There is no more airstrikes in Syria if this proliferates. And that's exactly what has happened, to talk at least, in the past week, Rick. Syria's foreign minister met with Iraq's foreign minister in Damascus, not just to discuss reconstruction, but specifically to address the security issue. Because Iraq, Rick, has become a focal point of Israel's military strikes since, I'd say, actually the beginning of May, because right now there's a battle for who will control the future of Iraq.
Amazing.
Yes.
Amazing what we're talking about. The balance of power in the Middle East has now shifted. The introduction of the S-300s, that was it. That was the game changer.
Yes.
We knew it was coming. And it's been held back for several years. It's now a reality. And we saw, was it yesterday or today, that President Putin met with General El-Sisi, the president of Egypt?
Yes.
Signed a cooperation agreement between Egypt and Russia.
Yes. You had to begin that military cooperation process. So they signed that agreement yesterday, and that opens the door for Russian investment in Egyptian military. And of course, you got the S-300s that'll probably be delivered.
That's what I'm saying. Are we going to
so you got all around the Middle East now. So
are we going to be reading next year that Egypt has purchased S-300s?
Probably even sooner than that, right before the end of this year, Rick.
And India has purchased them.
And they're talking about purchasing the S-400. That's another country that has...
Everybody getting missiles, man. Everybody got nuclear capability, man. Everybody.
So this is a counterbalance to the dominance that the U.S. and Israel have maintained in the Middle East up to this point. So that my question would be then, if that's the case, are we going to see this war with Iran delayed then? Is that going to be put off now? Not only with these things happening, but also the political things that we've seen over the past week or so that have developed with Turkey and with Saudi Arabia and everything. Is the war now going to be postponed?
A week ago, I would say no, but now, everything is different. We get the situation in Saudi Arabia, and you get the S-300s in Syria. And it is a completely different situation on the ground right now in the Middle East. The leader of Iran openly said today that Iran is pivoting to the east.
Yes.
That Iran is going to look to Russia and China. And you're going to see other Middle Eastern nations following along with Iran.
Well, look who's leading reconstruction right now in Syria. It's China. China has already committed millions of dollars to do the rebuilding from the bombing campaigns of both the Israelis, the Saudi Arabians, and the United States in that war-torn country. And you look at what China, remember when China thought about deploying their navy and their troops to that region? Clearly, Russia and China have exerted and supported. These governments have been under siege basically for the last 2 or 3 years. The countries such as Iran, Syria, and even Lebanon, and Iraq, they're now saying, we may have a viable alternative. But Rick, I think the real deciding factor is going to be who has control of the international monetary system. And maybe that's been the deciding factor why they haven't made the decision yet. None of these countries can operate without outside of SWIFT, outside of the currency reserve system the United States currently controls.
You can't separate control of the monetary system of the world from the potential for World War III.
Sure.
They're intertwined.
Yes.
Because it's about who controls the world.
Yes.
And
which is the Rothschilds.
The more the U.S. pressures the world to bow down and submit to American domination of the world, the more nations are resisting the pressure. Pressure only works for a season.
And finally, the pressure has to be released.
Yes. Slavery doesn't last forever. When people are enslaved, at some point they will revolt because the pressure becomes so great. They have to take matters into their own hands, and they come to a place of saying it's better to die than to continue living like this.
Right.
And so nations are feeling this pressure that the American empire has been imposing on them, because the rulers of the American empire are aware that power and influence and wealth is slipping away from them.
Right.
And the more that it happens, the more that they panic, and the more that they panic, the more oppressive they're becoming on nations. And it's backfiring.
It's
So what you have
backfiring.
today, Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei calling the United States the enemy. That's nothing new.
Right.
That's not news. But he said Iran would cooperate with Eastern nations, meaning Russia and China. So there's an alliance that's forming, and there will be a new economic system. That is the most dangerous thing, and I'm speaking to our audience in America. The greatest danger that we're facing right now is the collapse of our economic system.
Yes.
Right. And we could wake up one morning and suddenly the petrodollar is gone.
And let me say this, because they talking about all the other nations, they getting together, man, to come up against America, which is their enemy, man. Okay? They coming up against North America, which is the enemy. This is Joel chapter 3, verse 10. Beat your plowshares into swords. A plowshare is a gardening tool, okay? Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. A pruning hook is a tool used for agriculture as well, man. Okay, for gardening, for crops. So the Lord say, beat your plowshares into swords, meaning to missiles, and beat your pruning hooks into spears, which is missiles. Let the weak say, I am strong. So all those countries that used to be weak, according to North America, they are all strong now. They all have this S-300, S-400, man. Okay? This intercontinental ballistic missiles, man. You heard them say the ICBMs, man. Okay? Every country together need missiles against North America, and they are signed together, man. Assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about thither. Cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord. Let the heathen be weakened and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. Okay, my point is, the heathen say, the Lord, let the weak say I am strong, man. This is what the weak nation's saying. They are strong now, man. They got the same missiles, even better missiles than North America.
I have warned for years that this is going to happen during the night.
And if you would have said, once again, going back in time a little bit, if you would have said to me a month ago, if that's possible, based on everything that's going on with our relationship with Saudi Arabia and Israel and the alliances that they were making, I would have said, I don't see how that could happen. But now that pressure is there, the accusations are flying back and forth between
Look at these red Edomites,
now,
man.
especially over
Exposing
the
the
events
truth.
of past few days. So it's very possible that we could wake up one morning and say, what happened during the night? And we were
reset.
Yes. And where everything just shifted, where one nation said, I think we're going to start doing business over here now.
And the thing is that this isn't hyperbole, this isn't theory. This was actually threatened through one of Saudi Arabia's main television news outlets. I'm talking about their general manager published an op-ed only 2 days ago threatening that if the United States and its Western allies were to go ahead with potential sanctions on, based around the death or alleged death of Jamal Khashoggi, that Saudi Arabia would look at dumping the United States as basically the resolution currency for their oil. They would literally trade the petrodollar in for the petro yuan.
Edward, the executive of that Arab television network is Saudi Arabian, Al Arabia. Yes. I think he made 3 threats.
That's correct.
Let's list them in order.
So this the first quote is, as I mentioned here, is the change, petrodollar for petro yuan. The second one is that if the United States did this, were to put sanctions on Saudi Arabia, oil may go up to $400 a barrel. That's U.S. price. Okay, the third one is that Russia may be invited into Saudi Arabia to set up their own military base. Actually, at a key point in the northwestern portion of the country that would give Russia another place to control the air between Iraq, Israel, and Jordan, and Syria. The last one, a lot of people didn't see this one, Rick, is that Saudi Arabia may end their decade-long turf war with Iran. They may actually pursue, form, an alliance with Iran over this.
Now, wait a minute.
I know it sounds crazy, but when you break it all down, Rick...
But that now makes... Go ahead, Doc.
When you break it all down, Rick, if the events of the past week, if we're having like an Archduke Ferdinand moment that, brought us into World War I, but if we're having one of those moments right now with this journalist that has supposedly been killed, then we are possibly seeing a big shift not only within geopolitics, but also within the Muslim world itself, where you would see alliances now that would actually bring factions of the Muslim world together that were, arch nemesis for centuries.
But if Saudi Arabia kisses up to Iran and the Sunnis and the Shias become allies, Israel now has serious problems.
And speaking, we mentioned the conversations that Egypt and Russia have been having. But just a couple weeks ago, Rick, we were talking about Egypt and Israel having intelligence confabs, yes. And then we also talked about all these evangelical leaders that have been going to Egypt and talking to high level,
President Sisi.
Yeah, talking to President Sisi and having those conversations. And now we have this with Russia. So there is something happening under the water, if you will. I mean, we see the waves on top, but it appears there's some things happening under the water here that something could come up out of the water and bite us.
All right, I want to go back to this threat made on Saudi Arabian television, Al Arabia television, which is funded by the Saudi government. Yes. This is like their national public television, right? So nothing is said on that television network unless the kings and the royal family wants it said. All right. So he made 3 or 4 threats. I really want our audience to listen to this again, because I think it's easy for us just to hear it and gloss over it and not ponder the significance of what this man said 2 days ago on Saudi television. Let's go over the list one more time.
All right, so the first one, trading in the petrodollar for the petro-yuan. This is an actual quote from Turki Aldakil, the general manager of Al Arabia. An oil barrel may be priced in a different currency, Chinese yuan, perhaps, instead of the dollar. And oil is the most important commodity traded by the dollar today.
All right, let's stop right there. So the U.S. dollar has been the petrodollar ever since the days of Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger, after President Nixon took the U.S. dollar off the gold standard.
Right.
And he replaced it with Saudi oil. And the deal that was made in, 1973 was if the Saudis agreed that all oil in the world would be traded in U.S. dollars, then the United States would provide military protection to the Saudi government.
Yes.
That's why we have never done anything against Saudi Arabia, no matter what they do, because there's a deal. You prop up the dollar, we prop up your regime.
That's basically it.
That's the deal right there. And listen, what Nixon and Kissinger did, I don't agree with it, but it was slick. It was definitely a slick move, because Nixon took us off the gold standard. That's another discussion about what was happening. The Brits, according to Pat Buchanan, the Brits were raiding Fort Knox. The British government was cashing in, wanting gold. And that's what forced President Nixon's hand. He had to stop it. All right, they were taking the gold. And so that's a reality. So what they did is a very slick move. And it gave the United States, gave the U.S. dollar, what, 50 years, 50 plus years?
Of extra life.
Of extra life. It's now about to go kaput.
It's running on fumes.
Right, it's running on fumes, because if he has been told by the king, we're going to switch over. We're going to switch over to the we're going to have the petro-yuan currency. We're going to link Saudi oil to China. And where does China get their oil? They get their oil from
Russia is actually one of the main ones.
Russia, Iran, and Saudi Arabia. Okay.
But if they're denominating oil in yuan, then that gives China the power to be able to negotiate even better prices for fuel, for oil, and to give them the power.
It also gives them the out on their debt.
So,
yes.
Think about it. The United States has basically free reign when it comes to incurring debt on a national level, because we control the petrodollars.
So all oil trading in the world will cease to be done in dollars. The only country that will be buying oil in dollars will be the United States.
we'd be buying our own oil in dollars. I mean, that's the only place, because and have you noticed here over the past week or so, Rick,
America
how
finished,
they've been
man.
touting how we're energy independent now.
America is
They're
finished,
really bringing
man.
that out as if
Done.
they see something happening on the horizon. So this slick deal may be encountering an oil slick politically here, maybe within days or weeks.
All right, so number two.
So number two was that if sanctions were put on Saudi Arabia, the effect may cause them not only to default on 7.5 million barrels of oil they've committed to the market, but it would send the price of oil globally to $400 a barrel.
That's crazy.
Just quickly, that would put gasoline here in the United States, what, $15 to $20
About
a gallon?
$30, I think we're days.
How much?
$30.
$30?
We couldn't pay it. Can you imagine paying $30 a barrel?
$30 a
gallon.
gallon,
Can you
man.
imagine doing that?
Wow.
$30 a gallon, man.
$30. Gallon of gas, average mileage 30 miles to a gallon. I mean, would you pay $1 a mile to drive
Well, the
your
U.S.
car?
economy
Trucks would stop running.
The U.S.
Oh,
economy just stops.
Yes. Right.
It just stops.
Because our warehouse is on the highway, so all those trucks would really basically come to a standstill because they couldn't afford it.
That's right. So see, this is why we've been talking
America
about
will be done,
the
man.
alleged murder of this gentleman, Mr. Khashoggi, for several days, because this is what's at stake.
Right.
There's something going on behind the scenes that's much bigger than just this man's murder. So what else did the Al Arabia executive say?
The third one is that the Kremlin, Russia, may be able to open up a base on the northwest corner of Saudi Arabia, giving them access to both Syria, to Jordan, Israel, and Iraq, giving them literally, as they referred to it actually, as the four corner point. This is the quote. Imposing any type of sanctions on Saudi Arabia by the West will cause the kingdom to resort to other options. U.S. President Donald Trump has said a few days ago that Russia and China are ready to fulfill Riyadh's military needs, among others. No one can deny the repercussions of these sanctions will include a Russian military base in Tabuk, northwest of Saudi Arabia, in the hated four corners of Syria, Israel, Lebanon, and Iraq.
Wow.
Mind-boggling.
I mean, you haven't seen anything like this since the days of the Soviet Union.
Hey,
where
let the
you
weak
had,
say that I'm
the
strong,
Soviets, they
man.
were
I just
arming
read that in
Egypt, they
Joel,
were
the
arming
third chapter,
Yemen.
man.
I mean, you saw geopolitically, they
America
were trying to
is
control
done,
the
man.
Sinai
They
Peninsula
are
and all
done.
Bases.
Right. Now,
Bases. Bases of operation, not just for jets, but also for drones, for intelligence agents, for proxy fighters. This is such a huge change. Remember, where was the military invasion planned in that Grand Arab Army? It was the northwest portion of Saudi Arabia. This would end any coalition idea of a U.S.-led Arab army invading Syria, Iraq, or Iran.
Right? So he has threatened the end of the petrodollar. Number two, the introduction of the petro yuan. Oil going to $400 a barrel. And a Russian military base in Saudi Arabia. Is there anything else?
If that wasn't enough, here's the icing on the cake. All of these actions could unite the entire Middle East with Iran against the United States.
Did you hear that? All the Middle East, man, is going to join together as allies to come up against North America, man. Okay? Hey, man, North America is finished, man. Let the weak say that I am strong, man. The Lord say, this is Joel. Going back to Joel, man. Hey, man, it's over, man. Joel 3:11. Assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord. The point was, assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Hey, they coming up against North America, man. You just heard the man. Hey, they is finna join together, man, and destroy North America, man. This is Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 9. It said, for lo, I will raise and cause to come up against Babylon, which is North America, an assembly of great nations from the north country, and they shall set themselves in array against her. From thence shall she be taken. Their arrows shall be as a mighty expert man. None shall return in vain. And this is what they're talking about, the arrows, man. Okay, of all these countries, the S-300, the S-400, man. Okay?
So could Russia bring peace to the Middle East by uniting all the Muslim world there? I mean,
That's deep, man.
They would have to get Israel under control.
yeah, but the thing is, with all, if they've got S-400, S-500 technology that they'd be implementing all these different nations, including Saudi Arabia, Egypt, maybe even a partnership with Jordan. I mean, think about that.
Israel would have to go back to its pre-1967 boundaries.
Right. Which Russia has
Be
been
lawful.
holding the line on,
Right.
and they've been consistent about that they've been saying Israel needs to go back to its 67 borders.
The only way Israel would be allowed to continue to exist would be to retreat and go back to where they were at before 1967, because they've been occupying land that they took in military campaigns.
Did you hear that?
Which was never part of the UN resolution in 1947, 1948.
That's the Balfour Declaration.
The Russians and the Arabs together.
He said they've been occupying land that they took
You have two choices
through
here.
wars, man. They took
Either
our
go
land,
back
man.
to pre-1967 and calm down. No more attacks. You cannot bomb Syria. You cannot launch operations. You cannot have Mossad operations destabilizing other countries. Either you become a peaceful country in the Middle East, or you cease to exist.
Meaning they're gonna be destroyed, man. Either they're gonna join with Russia and all the other allies of the Middle East, or be destroyed.
It's over. It's over. It's over. You'd have the entire Arab world backed by Russia telling the Israelis, either you calm down and get yourself under control, or you cease to exist.
Wow. I did forget to mention another big one on here, where it could be the end of $800 billion of foreign investment by Saudi Arabia into the United States. That's really the last one on the list. There's a lot in this op-ed he wrote, but that is another aspect. If sanctions were to go in place, almost $1 trillion of Saudi capital will be taken out of America, will not be invested in commitments.
Okay, two things I'm just saying. Number one, the other part of that deal what Nixon and Kissinger did with the Saudis, in addition to, in order to get the American military support, they had to do two things. They had to do all oil trading in U.S. dollars.
Right.
Number two, they had to take excess oil profits and buy American government debt.
Yes.
Ooh.
That was number two.
Yes.
The other thing I'm thinking about, Doc, it just flashed in my mind the moment Edward said it. The prophetic warning that the late Pastor David Wilkerson gave decades ago.
About the oil fields on fire, or?
He said, the Arabs withdrawing billions of dollars from American banks so fast that the U.S. government could not keep up with it in one day. Just sucking the money out of American banks. Money that they have deposited in American banks. He said billions of dollars would be withdrawn from American banks in one day.
If you'd asked me last week if that was something that was on the horizon, I'd say we don't have to worry about that. Saudi Arabia and U.S. are partners and friends.
And Israel, and we were in Israel and Saudi Arabia were
they're sharing iron Dome.
becoming friends.
But now, today, I could actually see the Saudi government saying, we're emptying all our bank accounts in the U.S.
And it's all over this guy, Khashoggi,
Right.
being Khashoggi'd. All right?
Yes.
It's going to become a verb.
Yes. All right, so they, according to the reports that are out today in the Turkish papers, they didn't start by cutting off his fingers. They started by pulling off his fingers.
Oh, my goodness.
And the person, now this is what the Turkish newspapers are reporting, that the person who conducted the butchering of a human being, and the Turkish newspapers are naming this man from Saudi Arabia, and that he is an autopsy surgeon.
A forensic pathologist, yes.
Yes, forensic. Thank you, Doc. A forensic pathologist. He cuts up cadavers.
Right. Only this time,
wasn't a
he
cadaver.
wasn't a cadaver yet.
Because they're saying that Khashoggi was still breathing when he started the autopsy
Yes.
and dismembered him in 7 minutes.
Wow.
Listen, man. Hey, these Edomites, boy, they terrified, man. They scared. Okay? North America is finna be destroyed, man. Cause Russia, all these other countries, man, all these other allies, they are going to join with Russia to destroy North America, man. Thus saith the scriptures. Hey, so with that, hey, Lord willing, you were edifying. I want to say all praises to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rekah, Kodash, double honors to the apostles and the elders of great millstone who rule well, who teach well, and a sincere salutation to all the Akim, pushing this truth throughout the four winds of the earth, waking up the hopeful elect. And shalom to the Akwaf who are listening and learning. Shalom.